Nate Diaz vs Jorge Masvidal was actually better than expected. With the UFC taking a break this week, and me not being very interested in the Shakur Stevenson card, I decided to put on Diaz vs Masvidal instead. I thought going in, this would be a very sloppy, boring fight with bad boxing from both guys, and I was kinda wrong. The boxing technique that Masvidal implemented was quite decent. He was slipping and blocking most of Nate's shots, and although his output was quite low, when he did throw, he landed the more damaging shots. Nate Diaz was throwing a lot more punches, but most of them were kind of slapping shots without much impact. His actual boxing looked kinda poor, and his striking style was more suited to a sport like MMA obviously. But yeah, the combinations with any real sting to them always came from Masvidal throughout the 10 rounds. The volume came from Diaz, and the most eye-catching shots came from Masvidal, making this a tough fight to score. Masvidal also seemed to be comfortable leaning on the ropes, waiting for Diaz to throw his combination to then pop off his own counter, so his lack of ring generalship could have swayed the judges as well. I understand if you gave the fight to Diaz, I mean he was the official winner after all, but for most of the rounds, Masvidal was landing the more effective strikes, and I thought he won to be honest. Nate's punches were at least partially blocked on the gloves, if not fully blocked, and yeah, I just didn't think he did enough clean work in order to give him the nod. I would not want to be an official judge for this fight because there isn't a clear decisive winner. It depends on what you like and think is effective boxing pretty much. One thing that I've got to mention is how the total strikes for a fight should never be a factor as to who you think won. With boxing and MMA matches, you're scoring the individual round as a standalone fight. You shouldn't be taking total strikes into account or anything that the fighters did in the previous round. In the case of Diaz vs Masvidal, you're scoring 10 mini fights, and what happened before shouldn't weigh into your scoring. The real takeaway of Masvidal vs Diaz is that we need a better way to score fights, because the current system is broken. If they can't change the judging system in boxing entirely, then they should at least improve the one we got by adding instant replays, more judges, and a cleared unified scoring criteria that everyone can look at and abide by. Also, when a judge's scorecard is absolutely outrageous, let's use Glenn Feldman's card in favor of Anthony Joshua in the second Usyk and AJ fight for example, they should have their own press conference after and explain their thought process. I'm not saying that should happen all the time, but only if one judge scores it way differently than the others to where it doesn't end up making sense and something is off. Getting back to the Diaz vs Masvidal fights, both guys showed that they are tough as fuck at 39 years old, and even though Diaz got the nod, they should both be proud of their performance. Their boxing wasn't great by any means, but neither of them gassed and showed a ton of heart as well. Masvidal's technique didn't look that bad to be honest, and I'd like to see him box on Misfits or something later down the line. If he increases his punching outputs, I think a KSI or Jake Paul vs Masvidal fight makes sense in the future. Of course, it's 1-1 between Diaz and Masvidal, so I'm sure that they want to settle their rivalry in a second boxing match. And if this event did well, I can see Famio and DAZN running it back. I'm not sure if the actual pay-per-view numbers will be good enough to justify developing the rematch, but the arena looked pretty full by the time the main event got underway, so who knows what the future holds. Either way, Masvidal vs Diaz filled a void in the combat sports world this weekend. It was a bit of light entertainment, it gave me something to talk about with my friends, and although it wasn't the best display of boxing in the world, it was decent and a more compelling fight than I was expecting. There was a push and pull during the entire fight, and although it got a little stale by the 9th and 10th round, Masvidal vs Diaz was entertaining. That's all I can say.